Let me give a short outlook. Looking back first, it is the 4th Global Ethics Forum that we organize. In 2009, it was organized by somebody from, and we were just offering a workshop, and from 2011 on, it's our product, and so to say, and we organized it 11, 12, 13, and now 14. And it is based on the concept of concentrating on business ethics, as it is seen here, and we had always this subtitle, the value of values in business, and then one aspect, equality or others. And now we are looking forward, and before looking forward, it's important to emphasize and remind that we never understood it as a series of conferences. It's a process where a lot happens between the conferences. We have online work groups, some working since 4 years, renewed, others were closed, others were opened later. So, and recommendations came and influenced some other processes, some other projects, so it's a dynamic. It's a kind of a think tank event, this kind of conference. And that makes also a difference to other conferences. It's not just a conference, you go there, you publish a book and it's done. It's a process, and that's what we are looking for also for the next 3-4 years. The Board of Foundation, which will meet tomorrow and after tomorrow, will have a first look at it, and we are open really to design. We have not yet a clear view, because we want to listen also to you tomorrow, and we got also some suggestions already during these days. But I want to highlight options that we pre-discussed. One would be to continue with this kind of annual or maybe biannual or 18-month rhythm conference. The question will be, would it be always in Geneva? Would it be in different continents? Is it alternate? Another question is a conference still the right instrument? Because we are not fixed on conferences. It's an instrument which should serve a goal of bringing people together and doing things together. So the question is also, are other forms more appropriate today? But this is still a debate. The physical contact, as we see, the physical interaction of people is in an online network, as Global Ethics Net is, also important. We cannot have a network only based on internet connections. But this is a debate that is going on. Another debate is about the thematic focus. In 2010, when we agreed on the concept, we said for 2011 and 13, business ethics is the focus. But we said it can also be open to other domains of ethics. Be it concentrate on leadership issues, concentrate on health, concentrating on environment. That would be another option. But until now, the focus is on the corporate world, the economic parts, but you see in a very large sense. The third area of consideration or options is the question of partnering. We are considering, and we are already have experience on partnering with existing other fora, to have it as an event within the World Economic Forum, within Lille Forum, with other forums that exist, related somehow to economic issues, to bring in the ethical dimension in existing fora. Kind of could even be a piggyback model. So we don't exclude these options. We are discussing them, and we want to. And all that is, of course, the fourth point in this consideration, which is sometimes the first and sometimes the last, is the funding issue. It also depends on funding options. What are the funding options for this? What are the costs of these different options? And what is realistic to implement? I think we are proud to say that it was possible to do this series every year, a large conference, last year a bit a smaller conference, but it has to serve a goal. It's not a goal in itself, a conference. If it serves our goal to broaden this effort of global ethics, which has always very practical and concrete implementing goals, then I think it's good. Otherwise, we find other forms. That leads me to a few personal remarks and observations. I don't summarize the summary, but I would like to give a feedback of observations also of this conference, related also to the last four. One is, I think this wealth of contacts visible in this room is really a wealth creation through this multidisciplinary, multi-stakeholder approach. And what unites us, I think, that's my feeling, we are all somehow value-driven, and we share some values and some attitudes which makes this kind of conference very special. One is sharing. I feel there's a lot of willingness of sharing knowledge, sharing information, openness to each other, listening, which makes the dynamic. The second characteristic is competence. It's amazing how much knowledge and competence all of you bring to this conference. Knowledge on all different levels, intellectual knowledge, social knowledge, and competencies here. The third characteristics I feel from all of you is commitment. You are somehow passionate about what you are doing, what are your convictions. You want to be change makers. And that makes it so fascinating. And that makes it maybe also different to other conferences. This commitment and combined with a fourth characteristic, innovative and creative. I feel that you are people who want sometimes to go out of the box and try another way, so that things can move forward, not just think always in the same way. And that, I think, is part of ethics. Not going like that, but trying, if this is not possible, then we try another way in order to reach our goals. So these four characteristics, I think, make the wealth, and I say it also personally, and maybe this is the fifth, energizing. I'm personally very energized by this conference, even if it's tiring physically probably, but I get a lot of energy, and I think that is what we get also as feedback from you. So with that, if I compare it, and that's also feedback we got last year, if I compare it with conferences which are segmented, for example, academic conferences. As an academic, I also attend them. But what we often see is this is an assembly of individuals, individual kings. They defend their discipline, and their goal is to publish a paper, full stop. It's not, it's exaggerated, I know. If you go to political, everybody's mandated and has a government in the back and has to be very careful to be within the mandate. That is, of course, clear. But that limits the dynamic of a political conference. If you go to a corporate conference, you feel the power struggle also, because, I mean, everybody sees the markets, which is justified, which is needed. So the difference here I see is we all have also our constituencies and powers behind and within us, but it's not so much a power struggle conference. And maybe that helps in a move in another way forward than if we just defend our interests. So let it be just as a personal feedback from that. I'd like to hand over to two persons, but before doing that, thanking just these two persons, because it's up to them then to do the thanks. I would like to thank Vasanti and to come here because she's responsible on behalf of the organizers, the partners here in IAMB. And we have been cooperating since 4 years maybe now. And I think it's a lovely cooperation, and it's not only professional cooperation, we become friends, and that is also a characteristic of the conference, to find friends which are moving ahead. So thank you so much for all the work in this IMB with all the staff that are included. And the second person, I would like to ask Walter Fust for the closing remarks of the two of you. Walter Fust, you have seen how he acts in a very modest way, but if you know the person and his background, as in other countries he would be called as the Minister of Development, that he was for 15 years in Switzerland, and the wealth of knowledge he has, he can speak on almost every topic we have here in a very qualified way. But what is important here is that he is a real leader, as somebody who has a vision and a strategic, helps us in strategizing, but then also is very capable to make the difference between operation and strategy. And he leaves us a lot of freedom in operating, but while being the president for helping us in the strategy. So that's a unique characteristics where we are very thankful.
Thank you. Thank you, Christoph. Thank you, Vasanti. This topic of the conference somewhat brought me back to my youth when we had to read Oscar Wilde's Animal Farm. You know, the consequence and the conclusions. All animals are equal, but some are more equal. But his whole book is still of a great value, and the older you grow and more often you read that book, more often you start to embed somehow projections, maybe also from the psychology of animal behavior, Konrad Lorenz and others. But we are another species, we are human beings. And whatever we do, whatever we don't do, has to do with humans. And humans have those responsibilities our ancestors had and our children in the future will have. And I think Norman Scott, the Canadian writer who wrote the book Do You Hate Your Children, was fully right in calling us be aware of what you do today, because it has an impact on the next generations. We also heard sometimes of this new way that, especially in the Occidental world, you hear more often a kind of a rights-based approach. It's more than that. People only talking about the rights because they think they have created the state, so the state in the constitution gives them the rights back, but nobody wants to talk about duties. And I think the German president recently in a discourse, when he said, I have somehow the opinion that consumerism is more important than being a good citizen, maybe he's showing us the mirror by remembering us that duties in a society are there when we want to speak about shared societies. Shared societies, by the way, also a concept now heavily discussed and propagated by the Club de Madrid, this organization of former heads of state. So rights, wonderful. It's a means to empower people, but there are also duties. And those duties and those rights are very contextual, and culture does matter. There is no world culture when it comes how to live those different things. And that is wonderful, that is part of our world's diversity. We were so often touching upon during the last 2 days. So we had a very dense program. The selection, of course, of topics, subtopics, is always a way to try to find an equilibrium. Congratulations to those who made it. Yet there are, of course, also other topics that were proposed to be considered. We will take those ideas back, and certainly Christoph will allow, together with his team, to discuss those different opinions. So I would like to conclude here by words of thanks. First, we want, and I want, in the name of the board of Globe Ethics, thank this institute, the whole management of the institute, the organizer, Vasanti, with her partners, the local partners, with her staff here, but also the staff in Geneva. I am sure they followed very eagerly what was going on. I would like to thank all the sponsors, we have them here. I would like to thank the panelists, and I would like to thank the moderators wholeheartedly. Sorry that some could not make it here, some changes in their national agenda or in the travel arrangements did not function as foreseen. I would also like to thank all participants, and participants do create the forum, do give that life to the forum, we just heard in the personal comment of Christoph. But I would like to thank very much, and very personally also, to the key sponsor, not of this event, but of Globe Ethics, and that over time, and that is Mr. Lindsay, himself an entrepreneur with many other activities here in India, because he has another foundation, a foundation of his own. And I think he was one of the key persons that Globe Ethics was possible to be set up. Thank you very much. Now you have shown passion, you have also had patience, and to conclude with an African word, when I am there, they always tell me, you in Europe, you have the clock, but we in Africa, we have the time. India is somehow in between. Thank you very much.
I think many times after you've reached the destination, and for me today was a destination, Theodorina and Christoph, when I was sitting here and I was just thinking about the conversation and the vision that Walter and Christoph had in 2010 in Mysore, just after that, that someday we will have Jeff I think Jeff will go beyond Geneva. That was clear, but where Jeff was going was not very clear. And then, as usual, and if I've worked with this team for a few years now, whether it's Nadia, whether it's Lucy, or whether it is Theodrina, you get a sense that they kind of prepare you. And it takes them, they don't worry too much, it just takes them 3 years. But at the end of it, you wouldn't even know that you've been sucked into it. Okay, so to all of you sitting in this room, last year, little did I know in 2012 that I was going to end up hosting this conference. So in some sense, once that came, and then I didn't have a clue after that what was going to happen, and several of you have through the day been asking me, saying, how are you able to do this? I must make a candid confession that I don't do anything other than what you see on the panel, and if you don't believe me, I think there is a problem with you, not with me. And the reason why I'm saying this is because actually the person who's behind all of this, and there are actually 5 people, and they are my pillars of strength, and whatever you see of CCGC today is really them. And the person to whom I owe the translation of a dream that I had 4 years ago is Manoj Chakravarti. Manoj, please stand up. Yeah? There's not a thing that I ask that he's not able to translate into a reality. Yeah? And as an academic, I must confess that all of us are pretty poor managers. And most times we don't recognize that we are poor managers. Several times Manoj, in his own polite way, has told me that maybe you should stay out of management and just do things that you're good at. Which works brilliantly with his 35 years of corporate experience. He just then takes over. Okay? So, in some sense, Manoj, I don't think I have ever publicly acknowledged his contribution, and I can see he's so embarrassed, but thank you so much. And along with Manoj, standing there are Prabita, Manju, hold on, Haimashri, where is she? Archit, and finally the backbone of the center. Okay, Manju has been here before me, and that's Manju. So thanks to each one of you for having made this difference, and this conference is because of you. All of us need friends in life, and if that is a professional friend, so much better. To one person in the room, Padmini, thank you so much. Please stand up. She's not just a professor, but she's been a friend, and she's bailed me out innumerable times every time that I've asked her, and thanks for that, Padmini. Okay? To me, at this point, as I speak to you, several of you delegates are from India. What you saw here happening at the Jeff Forum, which is an international event with connections, I do hope that we all carry this dream and look at what this means for India. And why am I saying this? Because I think India is a continent. And therefore, if it is a continent, we need processes, we need systems that have to unify. And in that unifying, whether it is Father Francis from Nagaland, yeah, or whether it is Sanjay Mukherjee, who is from Shillong, or whether it is Mrs. Shankar Narayan from Bombay, I think all of us have a long journey to go on this. So my only request is, let's look at Jeff, and I will keep quiet after that. Thank you very much.
One second. One second, look here. 1 second, sir. Ready, look here.